folks. Thanks for joining us today. Welcome. My name is Dave Haas, and I will be your MC for today's event. Joining me is Dr. Kyle Roberts. We're with a data and analytics consulting firm called Resultant, and we focus on helping people make better decisions with their data. Our core areas of expertise include data warehouse modernization, data science, data governance, and data visualization. Now, if you are new to our webinar program, then you are in for a real treat today. Kyle heads up our data science program here, and he has the unique ability, and trust me, it's unique, of being able to explain how you can solve really difficult problems without requiring a deep understanding of statistics or needing to know how to write R or program in Python. It's quite an amazing thing, and you're going to get to experience that today. If you've been to some of our webinars in the past, then welcome back. We are thrilled to have you for this one. Now, this one actually is the first part of 3, and it's a series on supply chain and how you can use a tool called Alteryx to do that. You will not need a deep understanding or any understanding of Alteryx at this point. Kyle will take you through how it works and how we use it. So part 1 of this series today is focused on inventory optimization. Kyle's going to take us through basics of supply chain management, some of the key components that are involved in supply chain management, and the importance of effective supply chain management. So once Kyle goes through that, he's going to then dive into a real world demonstration using Alteryx Designer and show you how we leverage this powerful tool in an inventory optimization scenario. Now, before we get started and Kyle dives in here, allow me to run through a couple of housekeeping items. Number 1, this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be available to you, as well as any of the resources that Kyle uses today. We'll make sure that we can get you those in an email. All you'll have to do is send a chat or a question in the Q&A section down here below, and we'll make sure that we get those to you. If there are any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to ask them. I'll make sure that I keep an eye on those, and Kyle, I'll flip those your way so that as time permits, you can answer those questions in real time. And then we'll, of course, have a little bit of time at the end. Kyle, I think you're going to go for about 30 minutes, and then we'll have 15 or so open for Q&A. So with that, Kyle, allow me to pass the ball to you, and let's go.
Okay, sounds good. Dave, thank you so much. So I tell you what, I'm going to start from sharing my screen because really we're gonna be looking at data the entire time. And so instead of looking at just a picture of me, why don't we look at this and we'll kind of talk through this. So what I've done is I've made some really kind of mildly ugly data from sales at some stores. And here's why I made this, because when we're looking at supply chain and we're trying to look at, okay, how do we optimize, let's say, inventory around supply chain? It's really something that you have to do after you've been doing your work for a little while, right? So it's almost impossible to go, okay, how am I going to optimize my inventory when you just open up a store, or when you just open up a new location, or when you just open up a website and start to do selling through there. And so what I wanted to do was create a data set that I thought was moderately ugly, but not terribly ugly. And so what I did is I created this data set. Basically has 913,000 pieces of information in it, basically, that are sales each day. And so I have, so for example, this first row, what this represents is a sale of item number 1 in store number 1, and there were 13 sales that day, and then that occurred on January 1st, 2013. Okay, and so again, this is just a data set I created just because I wanted to model some trends, and I wanted to model some things that I thought were pretty interesting. And I would be happy to make this data set available to any of y'all if you're interested in playing around with this. Now, the first thing you'll note is that the way that this data is set up, that this is called what we call a long format, meaning that all of the sales go down and the dates go down in a single column. Now, you may be used to in an Excel sheet seeing like, okay, here's item number 1, and then each column is a different date, and you have the number of sales. That doesn't work for, that does work for like if you're wanting to, add or work things in Excel or something like that. But we really want it in this long format if we're going to do any type of analytics on it. Okay. And again, if we needed to, Alteryx is really easy to use to do in that way. So we could use we could use some of the transform functions to take this from a wide use transpose there and take it from a wide format to a long format so that we could use it in there. Okay. So what I'm doing in here first is I'm adding a couple of filters. And so I'm taking item 1 and store 1 that I'm pulling out. And then also I'm going to add a date filter just because there's a whole lot of data in here. And I just thought, well, it gets too much to see. Okay. All right. So what do we do with this after we have our data in there? Well, what we want to run is analytics to see, did we see any type of trends going on in the past? And would we be able to model those trends going forward? Now, why do we want to model the trends? Because what we're going to do is we're going to use information from the past to predict the future. And that will help us to be able to optimize how much inventory we need to have on hand and how much inventory we need to have going forward. Now, what I'm going to show you today is really the purpose of something really, really simple for doing this. And so this is something that any of you could do after watching this 30 minutes. You're going to be able to go in with your own data and do a kind of predicting out into the future. When am I going to run out of inventory? And so then figure back from how I'm going to need to stock or how many things I'm going to need. Now, I'll show you at the end something that's really, really complicated, but we're going to work up to that. Today, the idea is to just get something really simple in place where you can start doing optimization on anything that you have right now. Okay, so that's the goal. Okay, so I've got my data in here, and as you can see from this, it looks like I have 1,810 days worth of data. Okay. And I want to now look at, all right, what was happening in the past. So now my tools here, I'm going to go to time series, and I can use either of these, ARIMA or ETS. The difference being that usually ETS has if you're expecting some seasonality trends, that's usually there. And so ARIMA is just looking at just regular time series. It's going to weight the more recent application or more recent records that you have. But I'm just going to, for the purposes of today, it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to pull the ARIMA tool down onto my canvas. And then I'm going to connect my data set that's coming in, the data stream. All right. And this is pretty easy to do. I have 3 pieces of data coming in, as you can see. I've got, 5 pieces of data coming in: store item, the number of sales, the store by item, and then my date time field. Okay, so I'm going to call this model M1, and the target field is going to be sales because that's what I want to model going forward. And as you can see, my data is listed out by day, and there are 2 options by day. We can do all days, or we can do weekdays only. So if maybe our store isn't open on the weekends or something like that, we just have sales for the weekdays, we can model that. I'm going to put all days in there. And then we're going to run this, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the results from this. Now, I'm going to go ahead and pull this down a little bit because I'm going to need to use more of the canvas as we go forward. It's going to take a little bit to run. Alteryx is going to boot up an instance of R to run this ARIMA model, and then we will look at the output here a little bit. If you are familiar with the predictive tools, we have our typical 3 nodes coming out. There's the model up there. This is the R report coming out. And so if you're familiar with R, you should be really familiar with this type of output, but this is the one I want to see. Okay. So now, having seen that, I'm going to put that in a new window so we can see that together. Okay. And here's what my sales look like for all of my data across all of these 1,810 days. Okay. Now, it's kind of hard to see an individual data point in there, but what it is that what we're trying to do is that blue, there's really a blue dot in there. I'll tell you what, let me focus on just a smaller area. Maybe that area. There we go. Okay. This blue dot here, what that represents is it's like back testing. It's going back in time and saying, okay, based on the model, I'm going to fit what I would have predicted your score to be that, or the number of sales to be that day. And then the gray dot up above it right here, that's the actual. So we're actually hovering pretty well around. And as you can see from this, probably doing a pretty decent job of getting the trend across time. Okay. So let's go back and look at, and it looks like we do have a little bit of a seasonality trend there. So we might want to go back to an ETS type model, but we're just going to leave it as a REMA for now. Okay. And then the nice part is what Alteryx is going to do is it's going to show you, all right, going forward, like here's our current trend. So this is the last few days right here. And then here is what we're predicting going forward a few more days out. Okay. That's what we're predicting going forward. Now, what we can do is we can use this information in order to predict further than just a couple of days out. This is just predicting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days out. What we can instead do is say, all right, Alteryx, don't tell me what I'm going to do sales for the next 7 days. Tell me what I'm going to do for the next 30 days. Okay, so we can look into that. All right, to do that, we're going to pull in this TS forecast tool. So that tool, I'm just going to bring down and drop down onto my canvas. I'm going to connect it to this output node here. So I'm going to connect that node in. All right, so now it's connected. And then I want to forecast. So here's what I'm going to do. These are confidence intervals. We'll just leave those alone. But I'm going to forecast 30 days into the future. And so what I'm asking Alteryx to do is say, hey, run an ARIMA model for me, basically looking at the trends that we've had across time. And then I want you to use those trends that you've seen across time. And then I want you to project out 30 days out into the future. Okay, so I'm going to I'll add all my browsers just so we can see all this here. And then I'm going to actually, let me make sure I'm good there. Output 1, that's fine. Okay, that's coming in. I'm going to actually cache this at this point. Well, I'll tell you what, let me do this. I'd like to cache this just so it'll run a little bit faster in the future. So let me add a select tool in there. Okay, I'm going to cache it from that point forward. So now again, we're running our model, looking at things that we're testing in the past. We're projecting out into the future another 30 days. Okay, and then let's see what happens with our data here. Okay. So the first is this, as you can see, so here's our period that we've had, sub period. So this represents weeks basically. Okay, so we have basically carrying forward, we're in the 259th week and carrying forward into sub period 5. So that'd be the 5th day of that week, the 6th day and the 7th day, and then the next 7 days on that. Okay, next 7 days going forward. And we're going to project out 30 days into the future. And what we see is this column here, this forecast column, is what we're predicting the number of sales to be during that period of time. Okay, so we're predicting it to be 19.46. Okay, if we want to see this graphically, we can also see that here. So this has, again, all of our past data, but then it has going 30 days out into the future. So I want you to notice an interesting thing here, though, is that what our ARIMA function is telling us is that when we get more than about 10 or 12 days out into the future, it's having trouble. It doesn't feel quite as confident. And so it's kind of just predicting the mean going forward on that. And so we can do some model fine tuning, but we're not going to talk about that today. But we just want to get an idea of about how many sales we're going to have going forward in the future, 30 days into the future. Okay. So that's the number that we're seeing coming out right here, this forecast. Okay. So you may be asking yourself a question. Okay, that's good, but Kyle, I need to know when I need to place a new order. Okay, well, to do this, we're going to use the multi-row formula tool. So I'm going to drag that down onto the canvas. Let me give us a little bit more room. And then I'm going to connect that to this output node, right? Because that's where my data live. And correct that to the output node. And what I basically want to do is I want to get this forecast. I want to get a running total on that. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for, is this running total. And so in order to do that, I'm going to reconfigure this. I'm going to say that this new field, we'll call it running total. And that is numeric that we're going to be going to look at. So I want to say that is whatever the running total is for the previous row. So there it is. Plus whatever the forecast is for that row. So plus forecast. Oops, I put equals in there and I meant to put plus. There we go. Okay, so what this is doing is it's going to create a row for us that says, all right, take whatever's above us and add it to the forecast for that row. So this first one will just be 19.46, but the second one, it will be 19.46 is going to be, well, actually, I can just show you here in real time. By clicking on run. There we go. So if you see, we have our running total here. Okay, so it looks like we're having, so that first one, it looks like we've done 19 sales, and then now we're adding 19 to 20, well, 19.4 to 20.6, which means now we're at 40 and then at 58. So here's the nice thing. Let's suppose the item that we're selling here has, let's say it has an order quantity of 500. Let's say in order to make an order, we have to make 500 every so often. I mean, every time we place an order. Well, now what we can do is we can look days into the future and go, okay, I'm going to hit 500 sales at right about, looks like that's 26 days in. Okay. That's probably when I'm going to hit 500 sales, right around there. Okay. So the nice part is that now I know, look, about every 26 days, I'm going to need to be placing an order for about 500. Okay. That's how this is going to work going forward. So about every 26 days, I'm going to need to put that in there. Now, the nice part about this is that if your sales start to go up or they continue to go up, what I would do is run this every day. And let's suppose you had a value out here that existed in your data somewhere that was like how much inventory you have in stock that day. Well, now you could look at, okay, I've got 500, this is how many sales I'm looking at. We could use the multi-row formula tool to actually look at, okay, here's how many sales and how much going forward. When do I predict I'm actually going to run out of inventory? And then you say, all right, I know it takes 7 days to get my inventory in, so I need to back 7 days out of when I think I'm going to run out of inventory. Now, the nice part is too, is let's suppose you think your company is in a huge growth mode. Well, you may say, you know what, I know that's the forecast based on what's happened previously, but actually we're expecting big growth. Well, now I don't have to just base this running total based on just the forecast. I can base it on this high forecast, right? Maybe not the 95%, maybe I just want it to 80%. And all I have to do is instead of having forecast here, I'll just pull in on the current row, forecast high 80%. And now when I run that, that's going to be basically conservative for me on saying, all right, we're going to expect that sales are going to grow some. And now instead of running out at 500 after 26 days, we'll run out, we think we'll run out actually after 19 days. And so we need to increase our ordering cycle to that. Now, why is this really nice? Well, what we can do inside of Alteryx is then we can tell ourselves, all right, let's put different stop gaps in there that help us understand, all right, that send a trigger to us. And let's suppose this runs every night and you say, okay, how much do I have left versus how close do I think, or how close am I to running out? Well, now you can have it, Alteryx server trigger a email that gets sent out to you. It says, hey, we're going to run out in 7 days, it looks like. And so it takes us 7 days to order. Or maybe we're going to run out in 10 days. And so you should put an order in today because it takes 7 days to get that in. And so now you're having Alteryx help you with that optimization process. Okay. All right. So this is a really, really simple example. Let's look at a really complicated one. And then just to show you this, and then actually in the next series of Alteryx webinars that we're giving next week and the following week, we're going to talk about, like, how do you take something simple like this and then actually productionize this to where it's actually giving you really good information. It's giving you, all right, it's giving triggers for, hey, it's time to start, or time to place an order. Hey, you should be looking at, changing your stocking values for these. Okay, so how do we go forward on that? Well, in this case, I just wanted to show you an example of this. And the reason I wanted to show you this example is this is not something that I invented, but if you're on the Alteryx website and you just look under the help for this predictive inventory analysis, this is a really cool tool that the Alteryx team put together that does a really neat study of, here's everything you can do with Alteryx when you take a workflow like this and you basically put it on steroids. Okay, so what this workflow is doing, and you'll notice that it wasn't me that developed it, because it actually develops vertically instead of horizontally. But what this workflow is doing is it's looking at past sales for your data, and then it's running this really cool macro that predicts when they think that the data will, your values will be exhausted. Like, how many days out do you think it will be? Okay, so if you wanted to, we can actually look at this inventory analysis macro. I'll pull this up real quick. There we go. Okay, so what this macro is doing, and it's actually calling other macros, but this macro is pulling in data and then creating, again, running totals and starting to look at, all right, define when that cumulative sales minus the items will be near the number that we need to purchase. So that's this information right here. That's adding in more information from other tools, like amount of lead time that you're going to need. And what it ultimately ends in is this really great XML report that says, okay, well, actually, let me show you what the interface looks like real quick. Sorry about that. The interface is now this app that we can put up on server that someone could say, all right, let's look at our Dallas store and let's predict the appliances, and let's say air purifier, attic fan, and then the broom, and then the burglar alarm. Let's say those four. Let's predict, let's see how they're doing, and let's predict when we're going to need to do a reorder. And so I'm going to cancel on that because it takes a while to run. It's pretty complicated. But here is basically the analysis that's done afterwards. So it's looking at our Dallas store, and then the inventory summary. I did actually the broom, the attic fan, and the air purifier. It's looking at, okay, here's how many items we have remaining. Here's the order date that we're saying, like, we're going to need to order by this date. And then there's the days it'll take to order. And we think we're going to exhaust our current inventory in 31 days on the broom, 32 days on the attic fan, and then 40 days out on this air purifier. So this is telling us kind of a linear relationship for about how many sales we think we're doing each day. So you see the actuals don't quite match up. And so we could actually improve this if we wanted to do it instead of in a linear fashion. We want to do it in a time series, but again, more difficult. And so now you can see for each of these, all right, there's the air purifier, and then there's what we're looking at. All right, days to exhaust 40 days. There's the attic fan, days to exhaust 32. And then here's the broom, days to exhaust 31. And so really all we've done with this tool is we've just added stuff into this, but it all comes down to, what have you done in the past? How do you predict that out into the future? And then using information on something like this running total, looking at that, saying, all right, here's when I think I'm going to be out. Here's how much it costs. Here's the minimum order size. And then also here's how many days I think it's going to get that data in. Okay. So I'm going to actually pause right there, because this is a really good place to pause, because this is a pretty simple way to look at our analysis. And this is a incredibly complex way to look at our analysis. What we're hoping to do over the next 3 weeks is we're going to kind of build up to this. So we're going to take this data and we're going to add even more to it as we go forward. Okay. So I know that's a little bit like drinking from a fire hose, but this is your first initial, all right, how do I do inventory optimization? in a really, really simple way. So this is our first stab at it, and then we'll get more and more complicated as we go on. All right. So let me pause and ask Dave. I think there may have been some questions that popped up, or you may have already handled them.
Oh, we got a couple for
Okay.
you. Let's start with the first. Can we have a resource to do this in Python to write our own code for inventory optimization with Alteryx?
Yeah, so you can do this inside of Python, most certainly. And there's going to be actual optimization procedures and optimization engines that are really powerful for doing this. And they're going to consider, I mean, this is, I used to have a colleague here who, got his master's in not in inventory optimization, but in the mathematics behind optimization. So yes, now those Python resources are going to be much more complicated. And so you're going to do hyper tuning of parameters. You're going to look at, you're going to even be able to control in there, like, okay, if I order 500, then I could, I'll get one discount, but if I order 1,000, I'll get a bigger discount, but I've got money tied up in that if I order 1,000, and am I selling enough to justify ordering the 1,000? And actually I only got this much space to store things. So when you're talking Python, we are talking taking it to that level of incredibly complicated inventory optimization. Now, that's not what we're talking about today. And so that's going to get a little bit beyond our current skill set and availability here. But we can work up to that. And I may show some of the ways to do that. I'm not, Dave, I'm not quite 100% certain I will, but I may show some of those ways to do that in the next couple of weeks.
Yep. And we're here as a resource. So if you do want to have a consultation with Kyle, just reach out and we can talk maybe about this outside of the webinar platform, because it's definitely more.
One thing I do want to add on that front, though, is that here's the strength of this. If you can build the tool inside Python, but you're going to have to babysit it, right? And so you're going to have to spend a fair amount of time, like someone's going to have to sold up your Python environment. Someone's going to have to, make sure everything's functioning, working well. The great thing is, even if you did build it in Python, I would deploy it inside of Alteryx. So I would actually use Alteryx and use the Python tool inside of here. And so, I would just pull in all my Python scripting down into here. And that's how I would run it. That's how I would do it. So great question, though. All right. What's the next?
Right, because then you've got all your data cleaning processes. You basically
100%.
Right. Yep. And that's why you do it.
And then I can deploy it on server and somebody else can use it and they don't have to
right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Excellent question. Thank you. Okay, next up. So you showed us two ways of doing this. One was relatively simple. The other was super complicated. How long does it take to progress from the simple to the complex in terms of
skill? That's a great question. Okay. So yes, it a little bit depends on your skills in Alteryx, right? I think that someone could, as long as you possess the amount of knowledge it takes to build a macro. I mean, I think that someone could build this in, this may be a couple days worth of work. But going from this to this for a novice Alteryx user is, you may talk, this is 6 months worth of effort, right? It may make more sense to hire someone to build you something like this instead of trying to build it from your own. But this is doable, right? This is it's 1, 2, 3 tools. That's it, right? And as long as you have someone, have someone who kind of knows what they're doing, just to look over your shoulder and go, yeah, that looks good, I would go with that. Then, you're literally 3 tools in. That's it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Kyle, I got another question. This one was on the Viz side. Can I export the results to an Excel file so I could feed it into Power BI for a better looking Viz?
Absolutely. So so let me just grab a output tool. Well, so I can export it into Excel if you need. And so, well, hold on. I didn't grab it. There we go. There we go. Sorry about that. So the things that I can export it into, of course, Excel's in there, right? So I can use any of these Excel formats. I can, even if I'm using Tableau, I can push it out as a hyperfile to be utilized from there, no problem. Or if let's suppose what I want this to actually do is to update my Snowflake instance every evening. And so I have this run every night. Snowflake gets updated, the data's up there, and so it's ready for everyone. So I'm not actually writing it to Tableau. I'm having Tableau point to this data source that gets updated every night that lives in my data warehouse somewhere. And then this is kind of nice because what you can actually do is then over a period of time, you can plot predicteds versus actuals to see what items you're doing better than or worse than. And so I fully recommend, every night have this push out somewhere where you're having your predicted versus your actuals. And then you can see over time, how were you doing at predicting that future? So yeah, no problem.
Excellent. Kyle, looks like we have a couple folks that are less familiar with Alteryx.
Okay.
Is there a way to kind of get started easily with the Alteryx platform? You haven't really shown any coding today, correct?
No coding. This is today was designed to be a no code day.
So it's all been drag and drop onto the canvas.
100%, 100%. So if you're wanting to get going in Alteryx, I mean, the thing I would recommend is just going to alteryx.com. And then when you go to products, what you're looking for is just Alteryx Designer. That's what you're wanting to do. And you can get a free version of that, or you can click up here, it says free trial. You can get a free version of that. Or maybe even so, Dave, what we could do is in a follow-up email, we'll send information on, how to get a free trial. And then I think they're good for about 30 days. And then that will let you, and we'll follow that up with our data set, and you can actually build that yourself and, build an example on the fly. And then we're always happy to, we're an Alteryx training partner. And so if it is something that your organization is looking at, we would love to work with you and get Alteryx up and going at your place of business. So.
Okay. That's all the questions we have today.
Okay. All right. Well, that's all I have. Dave, do you have anything else before we go?
No, thanks so much, Kyle. This was great. For those of you that had requested the resources, I'll be sure that we send those over. I'll send the recording and make sure that we follow up with each of you. Look at your calendars or look at your inbox. There will be another invite going out for the second part of this series. It should go out this week, and we'll make sure that everyone has the opportunity to join. Oh, actually, Kyle, I have one more. Let's see. Okay, this is someone who wants to be connected to the remainder. Okay, great. Yes, Jeremy, saw your question. We will connect you, no problem, with the remaining webinars. Well, thanks so much, Kyle. Appreciate it. And you guys have a great day today.
Thanks. All right.
See you in the next one. Bye-bye.